In my previous life, my elder sister married the crown prince while I married the lame third prince. She became the envied crown princess, while I became everyone's laughingstock. But when the crown prince's bid for the throne failed, it was my husband who eventually became emperor. Later, my palace mysteriously caught fire, and both my sister and I perished in the flames. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the moment when the crown prince came to propose marriage. My sister suddenly pushed me into the crown prince's arms. "Sister, let me take your place this time." At that moment, if not for maintaining her dignity as the household matriarch, I suspect she would have grabbed Song Yuanji by the ear and asked if she had lost her mind. Even though the third prince was born sickly and had no chance at succession, and had broken his leg as a child, leaving him permanently lame, father had promised to marry one of the Song family daughters to him. The Song family had only 2 daughters, Song Yuanji, the legitimate daughter, and me, the concubine born. "Yuanji, stop this nonsense." Father was first to react. "How can you decide whom the crown prince should marry? Your Highness, please forgive my daughter's improper behavior." I quickly stood up from the crown prince's embrace, curtsied to him, then timidly hid behind my sister. "Your Highness, please forgive my boldness," my sister said calmly. "Everyone in the capital knows our Song family has a marriage arrangement with the third prince." Grand Tutor Zhao showed great kindness to my father. As the legitimate daughter of the Song family, raised with careful guidance, I should naturally repay father's debt of gratitude. She continued unhurriedly, "What an admirably grateful Song family daughter. Then let Miss Song the second marry into the Eastern Palace." Stepmother's face turned ashen. "Others didn't know, but I did this dignified." This achievement would make the old emperor see him in a new light and name him heir, despite his physical disabilities. But the author wanted to incorporate the popular rebirth element, deciding to have both the crown princess and third prince's consort reborn for a different storyline. Unfortunately, the characters became inconsistent, and the story was abandoned. I am the former third prince's consort Song. I am actually a time traveler who was reading novels late at night with a toothache. I came across this plot-broken story, complained about it, and suddenly found myself transported to when the plot started falling apart. If given another chance, I definitely wouldn't stay up reading novels. Or at least I'd read more carefully. Then I wouldn't have such a vague memory of how the third prince gained the throne, or what the crown prince did wrong. After seeing off the crown prince, Song Yuanji noticed me daydreaming. "You are about to become crown princess. Watch your behavior, and don't disgrace the Song family." Remembering the previous life's ending, it seemed the deposed crown princess Song Yuanji was spared death by the new emperor's mercy, and sent to the empress's palace, only to die that very night in a fire along with the empress. I couldn't help wondering, had she killed me out of jealousy? Was she now planning to marry the third prince first to become empress? After my engagement to the crown prince and my sisters to the third prince, the marriages of the 2 Song daughters became the capital's hottest topic. In my previous life, marrying the lame third prince had made me the target of noble ladies' mockery. A concubine's daughter with a lame prince, quite a suitable match. This time, though some mocked her poor judgment in choosing the third prince over the crown prince, most praised her noble character as a distinguished family's daughter. As for me, people both envied my good fortune and thought me unworthy, expecting the crown prince to break the engagement. The crown prince and third prince often visited our mansion. I shook my head. Though knowing she was reborn and aware of the crown prince's ultimate fate of imprisonment by the third prince, yet still eagerly pushing me toward him, left me feeling uneasy. Moreover, the previous life's fire had many suspicious aspects, and the original author's writing seemed to deliberately hint that my sister had set the fire out of jealousy over my becoming empress. "You are a concubine's daughter. Your timid nature won't cause trouble. I wouldn't mind hiding away with the deposed crown prince later." After instructing me, my sister went to meet the third prince while I went to see the crown prince. The dramatic plot twist last time had made me overlook the crown prince. Looking carefully now, he truly was as described in the book, jade-like features, elegant and charming, especially his eyes. Perhaps because he was born as the legitimate heir and hadn't experienced court intrigue. His gaze was very clear, though naturally carrying some princely dignity. Miss Song II is quite as beautiful as your sister, the Crown Prince said warmly when he saw me. Don't be afraid of me. You and I will be husband and wife, the closest people in this world. In the book, but I had found the earlier parts boring, and read too superficially. I really couldn't remember who the treacherous minister was, or how the Crown Prince came to believe such baseless claims. Your Highness holds an exalted position, while I am humble. I dare not overstep. I adopted Song Ningji's expected manner. Careful and cautious. I am deeply grateful that Your Highness doesn't despise my lowly status. Song family daughters are all well educated indeed. He laughed heartily. Your proper demeanor is like a little rabbit raised in the Eastern Palace, looking docile and clever, though one never knows when it might bite. Rabbits should repay kindness with gratitude. I racked my brains, but animals lack wisdom and don't understand they shouldn't harm their benefactors. People should know better. Song family is indeed extraordinary, having both a noble-minded eldest daughter and a perceptive second daughter. How delightfully surprising. As I wondered how to respond, I heard the third prince and my sister. Greetings to Your Highness. The third prince resembled the Crown Prince facially, but seemed pale from chronic illness, walked with a slight limp, appearing innocent and frail. I remembered from the original story he was actually a long-dormant viper, outwardly vulnerable but possessing extraordinary inner strength. Standing beside him, Song Yuanji with her dignified peony, like beauty, truly seemed mismatched. Your Highness appears to get along very well with my sister, Song Yuanji said graciously. I won't intrude further. Speaking of which, Miss Song will be my future sister-in-law. I also wish Your Highness and the second Miss harmonious marriage. He looked at me deeply before leaving, his gaze complex and somewhat chilling. Half a month later, my sister married the third prince first. And another half-month later, I married the Crown Prince. The day after my wedding, I accompanied the Crown Prince to meet the Empress. Ningji, please sit. After I sat down, since you mentioned having a headache, perhaps the Crown Princess could play a piece to soothe your mind. My heart sank. I had only learned piano in modern times, and knew nothing about ancient instruments, but the Empress was clearly interested. Then have someone bring up the zither. I'd like to see Miss Song II. As I panicked, I noticed my sister watching me with curiosity and investigation. But if you play poorly, I'll have to impose punishment. Just as I steeled myself to approach the zither, a maid beside me suddenly seemed bumped by me, spilling her tea bowl directly onto my hands. You clumsy servant! How careless! The Crown Prince scolded angrily, rushing to examine my hands. My previously pale, slender fingers were covered in blisters from the scalding tea. After the Crown Prince left for morning court, he entrusted me to her care. After the physician treated my wounds, my sister suddenly asked in a low voice, You are not Ningji. Who are you exactly, sister? What are you saying? If I am not Ningji, who could I be? My heart raced, but I had to appear calm. If they become infected, you might never play instruments again. Not knowing how to return home, I currently saw that Song Yuan, being reborn and the legitimate Song daughter, probably wanted to become empress. My choices were either to use what I knew to help the Crown Prince avoid risks and protect his position, or pretend ignorance and succeed and the Crown Prince be imprisoned, living out my days until death might return me to my— How are your hands? The Crown Prince before me smiled charmingly, with his peach blossom eyes. Your Highness possesses all under heaven. I am merely your possession. If Your Highness wishes to protect me, I am naturally delighted, not a possession. He suddenly looked at me earnestly. You are my properly wedded wife. When you are well, I am happy. When you suffer, I worry. Husband and wife are one body. How could you be merely an appendage? I stared at the young man before me, unable to connect him with the madman from the plot who would believe slander and try to kill his own father. He seemed frank and bright. I suddenly desperately didn't want him to meet the book's tragic ending. After that, Song Yuanji often came to see me. She chatted about fashionable styles in the capital, relationships among palace nobles, and news from father and stepmother's letters, but rarely mentioned the third prince. The empress plans to hold a flower viewing banquet in the palace soon. You rarely participate in such events. So I must explain the important points. Her tone was always indifferent. You are the crown princess, you must straighten your spine and stop looking so anxious all the time. The more time I spent with her, the Song family's legitimate daughter, the capital's renowned talented woman, and an example that made all noble ladies respectfully acknowledge her superiority, such a woman burning down the imperial palace, and killing her own sister out of jealousy seemed absurd. Is the crown princess listening to me? She frowned, pulling me from my thoughts. I quickly nodded, seeing my serious, focused expression. She smiled. Your Majesty now seems like a child. Sob. I am just a naive college student who studied liberal arts compared to legitimate daughters trained by great families. I really am like a child. Life is so boring, I can only conscientiously cosplay. Sister, how do you get along with the I gathered courage to look into her eyes. Her gaze flickered. His Highness treats me very well. Thank you for your concern. Crown Princess. My intuition told me she was lying, but since this was her choice after rebirth, I had no right to interfere. My own situation was already chaotic enough. This future emperor's true nature remained a mystery to me. I just somewhat wanted to ask Song Yuanji, was abandoning the sunny, warm crown prince for the calculating third prince really worth an empress title? The flower viewing banquet arrived as scheduled. Besides palace ladies, various princes and princesses were also invited. I watched Song Yuanji from afar, supporting the third prince. Though he carried an air of cold detachment, his eyes were gentle when looking at Song Yuanji. He seemed to care for her too. Seeing me constantly watching the third prince and Song Yuanji, the crown prince beside me huffed in displeasure. Your eyes are glued to other people. Are you envious of them? You might as well look at me more. I smiled helplessly. She was the third prince's mother. Quite enviable indeed. After several exchanges with the empress without gaining advantage, she claimed illness and returned to her palace. I coldly observed this flower viewing banquet. Other consorts either flattered or remained silent. Only consort Zhao dared oppose the empress. The third prince's obsession with the throne was probably inseparable from consort Zhao's influence. Song Yuanji handled such occasions skillfully, while I could only manage adequately. Feeling somewhat dejected, the crown prince secretly squeezed my hand. I think you are perfect as you are. Don't be sad. Looking at his gentle, clear eyes, I suddenly decided to try changing his fate. From then on, I frequently visited Song Yuanji. I had no choice. Having decided to help the crown prince meant putting more effort into understanding his opponents. But the third prince rarely left his residence. 8 out of 10 times I visited, he wasn't there. And the 2 times he was present, he seemed sickly. Ningji has been visiting the third prince quite frequently lately. I am just bored alone and want to chat with my sister. I never heard you were so close with your sister before. The crown prince chuckled. But frequent visits are good. I am busy with duties, and you must be lonely. According to my remembered plot, about a year after marriage, the crown prince would begin considering seizing power, while the third prince's health would gradually improve. But it had been most of a year since our marriage. The crown prince remained gentle and kind, and the third prince showed no signs of recovery. Had my sister's rebirth or my time travel changed the plot? Facing the unknown made me both panicked and afraid. The crown prince wasn't a fool who'd believe slander, and my sister shouldn't be a jealous woman who'd disregard life. Just as I worried about the future, I unexpectedly received an invitation from the third prince. When I arrived, Song Yuanji wasn't with him. He looked at me coldly. You contacted me saying your birth mother died unjustly, wanting to work together to bring down the Prime Minister's mansion, willing to be my assistant. How come there has been no word from you? Are you trying to back out? No. What plot is this? I only remembered the original story's very rough description of Song Ningji's background. just saying she was a concubine-born sister who died in childbirth with her second child. How did this become a revenge story for her mother? I don't care if you are pretending or truly stupid. Don't forget, I still have the military secrets you previously stole from the Prime Minister's mansion. If you renege, don't blame me for being ruthless. The third prince's gaze was sinister. Though tell the Crown Prince favorite, encourage him to seize power. If you don't do as I say, then everyone will know Miss Song. The second stole secrets and sold military intelligence. If Song Ningji had already been collaborating with the third prince, how much had she contributed to his timely assistance and imperial succession in the previous life? So that fire, was it my sister's jealousy over her younger sister's high position, or revenge for her ruined life? My mind was in turmoil when the Crown Prince returned. He affectionately rubbed my face with his stubble. What is wrong? You look troubled. If you keep worrying like this, how will you give Father Emperor a little grandson? Do you trust Father Emperor completely? I forced a smile. He seemed puzzled why I'd ask this and nodded firmly. Then you must maintain that trust. You will be the finest heir in the world. Nothing and no one should shake that belief. I looked steadily into his eyes, wanting to pour all my life's devotion into this moment. Why bring this up suddenly? He looked confused. Why dwell on such useless thoughts? Nothing. I must thank third sister-in-law for her generosity, letting me meet such an eloquent little rabbit. I didn't know what connection Miss Song II had with the Prime Minister's mansion, but currently, I saw gentle, kind Song Yuanji, the Crown Prince who loved and respected me, and stepmother, who though somewhat stubborn was fundamentally good-hearted. I didn't want to drag them into such a tragic ending, even if it cost my life to change everything. I was willing, because I am a person capable of independent thought, not a puppet controlled by plot. The next day I summoned Song Yuanji. I know you've been reborn. I tried to appear in control. I want to make a deal with you. Song Yuanji composed herself. What is your Majesty saying? I don't understand. You want to be Empress, I can let you have it. You've seen that this lifetime is completely different from the last. We can change everything. If only you were truly my sister. Song Yuanji sighed deeply. You have opinions. Ideas, though somewhat naive. You are sincere and brave. I smiled bitterly. Since that is the case, from Song Yuanji's account, Song Ningji's mother was stepmother's younger sister, always cautious and fearful. After stepmother bore Song Yuanji, she injured her body and couldn't have more children, but the younger sister became pregnant with a second child. Fearing disaster, she voluntarily offered to let stepmother raise the child after birth. But due to excessive worry during pregnancy, she died in childbirth anyway. Consort Zhao had long planted spies in the Prime Minister's mansion. Her spy used the birth mother's death to constantly manipulate Song Ningji. Song Ningji harbored thoughts of revenge, while also feeling stepmother and sister treated her well. She cooperated with Consort Zhao but limited it to undermining father. After marrying the third prince, he was gentle and considerate, but household members compared him unfavorably to the crown prince with mocking words. Song Ningji, heartbroken for the third prince, when he had her spread rumors in the capital, she spread word of the crown prince's lack of virtue. Combined with the third prince's people constantly manipulating the crown prince, he indeed attempted to usurp the throne, and met a miserable end. The third prince gave Song Yuanji to Song Ningji as a gift. But Song Ningji, feeling she had ruined her sister's life, and that her revenge was complete, decided to commit suicide by fire in the palace. To save her, Song Yuanji rushed into the flames, and unfortunately died alongside her. I still don't quite understand why my sister wanted to kill herself, Song Yuanji said, looking dazedly at the ceiling after recounting everything. Actually, I was negligent in not noticing someone was distorting facts for her. The third prince ultimately did nothing to father and mother to him. Chess pieces are simply discarded when used up. Sister need not have died in atonement, but I understood. Song Yuanji had always been malicious and treated her terribly. I don't want to be empress. I just don't want you controlled by the third prince again. She looked at me with a relieved smile. You are a lovely girl. And having you beside the crown prince is good. Which is why I switched husbands with you. The third prince came to me. I also exhaled heavily. He wants me to be the one whispering slander beside the crown prince. He wants another palace coup. Don't worry. His health won't last much longer. Song Yuanji clenched her fist. I absolutely won't let such indiscriminate killing happen a second time. Remembering the third prince's consistently poor health this lifetime, I had a suspicion. I stared at the sister before me who had always been as gentle and warm as sunshine. This was what a great family's legitimate daughter was capable of. You just be good and be your crown princess properly. She patted my head. You are a good child. She patted my head. Hearing this news, the emperor was deeply saddened. His already declining health worsened, and 4 months later, the crown prince ascended the throne. I suggested to the crown prince that we select female officials for the palace to educate palace women, gradually spreading education for women throughout our dynasty. After some consideration, the crown prince agreed. I made this willful suggestion because there were too many women like Song Yuanji in the palace, intelligent and capable, rather than letting them burn out their talents in endless years. Why not let them have their own careers and let their abilities flourish? Song Yuanji, as the first female official, hugged me tightly after receiving the imperial edict. I really underestimated you. You are not just a clever, cute girl, but an empress with far-reaching vision. I wiped tears from her eyes, using Song Ningji's face to say, elder sister, I am sorry. After Song Yuanji left, the crown prince, now the new emperor, had just finished court, and was heading to my palace. You and your sister are quite close. He held me. I had a dream. What dream? What dream? My brother became emperor. Song Yuanji's side story, watching Ningji light the fire. I rushed over regardless of everything. She cried out to me. Sister, I wronged you all. But I only wanted to pull her out. She never intended to harm me, and shouldn't end her young life so tragically. But there was no way. I was still too late. In the end, we both burned to death in the imperial palace. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to several days before the crown prince's marriage proposal. After years together, though the crown prince and I were merely respectful to each other, I knew he was a good man who would make a good emperor. I wanted to make a different choice before everything became irreversible. So I carefully planned to marry the third prince myself, either persuading him to give up the throne or making him unable to pursue it. But I discovered Ningji seemed different. I could immediately tell something was wrong with Ningji. Her gaze had always been somewhat guilty and apprehensive. But overnight, she became like a little girl carefully playing Ningji. Her eyes clear with some confusion, occasionally revealing a bit of mischief, watching me push her toward the crown prince. Her gaze was as bewildered as a little deer. I secretly found it amusing but maintained my composure, telling her not to disgrace the Song family, observing her quietly for several days. I found she often scratched her head in confusion, sometimes carefree, as if she didn't want to worry about anything. Other times deeply troubled as if the sky was falling. She looked adorable, but I often thought of my real sister, lost to unknown fate. If she could have grown up in a better environment, perhaps she too would have been this endearingly innocent and spirited. I watched my sister grow from a baby in swaddling clothes to a graceful young lady. But as the legitimate daughter bearing responsibility for family honor, I sometimes neglected her. I never expected this would give malicious people an opportunity. Only after my death in the previous life, when my soul lingered in this world for a long time, did I discover what pain and conflict Ningzi had carried. Such a pity I couldn't save her. Now, I don't want such a lovely girl to bear the same pain as Ningzi. After marrying the third prince, I subtly urged him to abandon his obsession with the throne. Both mother and son had developed a pathological obsession with imperial power. So I did the most rebellious thing of my life. I drugged the third prince, making his feigned weakness real. I wanted my sister never to face anyone's threats again. Having done this, I planned to spend the rest of my life with Buddhist lamps and prayers, uninvolved in worldly affairs. But then Ningji proposed to the emperor, that they select female officials to educate women. She shook my arm coquettishly, saying women's education couldn't succeed without me as a teacher. Looking at her charming face, I couldn't bear to refuse, because I thought if the real Ningji had received more education and developed her own judgment, would she have lived more happily? Looking at my students' eyes, some curious, some disdainful, some indifferent, I gently spoke. Class begins. Crown Prince's side story. How could there be such an odd little girl? On the surface she was respectful and fearful toward me, clearly a concubine's daughter, yet she seemed learned and knowledgeable. Though appearing honest and timid, her eyes often revealed mischief. I brought her to the Eastern Palace, and watched her progress from initial fear of me to later speaking freely, and acting naturally, which gave me some sense of accomplishment. I must be sick. Later the little girl seemed troubled, asking me strange questions and making odd comments. That very night, I had a dream where I believed slander and staged a palace coup, but this didn't seem like something I would do. To reassure her, I only told her about this dream after ascending the throne. Ningxi's side story being burned alive really hurt, but perhaps my heart was already numb. I almost wanted to laugh until I saw that Full Song Yuanji rush in. She shouted for me to come out. That she didn't blame me. But it was too late, I couldn't escape. And neither could she. After death, I entered a mysterious place. I watched someone facing a glowing square thing, muttering, "Women from great families should be wise and dignified, not full of malice and jealousy." I watched her write frantically, then felt dizzy and found myself in another girl's body. Before me was the same square screen with constantly changing words, telling a completely different ending from what I had experienced. I stared intently at the changing words. But since I couldn't read many characters, I rushed out to find someone to read the ending to me. I think this body's soul went into mine and changed that ending. But where should I go? While pondering, someone patted my shoulder. "Daughter, what are you thinking about? Standing foolishly in the street. Mom's going to make you braised pork ribs." Stunned, and foolishly called out Mom,